Hey there, I'm Thomas Cox. I'm your host for today's session with IMCnow, the Pacific Northwest, Oregon, and Washington chapter of the Institute of Management Consultants USA. We've got a pretty good turnout today for our event. Our topic for this meeting is a recap of ConsultCon. We, a few months ago, had the annual ConsultCon conference in Louisville, Kentucky, my old hometown. I sadly did not attend, but some folks attended virtually, others attended for real, and several of them are going to recap for us their key takeaways, the most important things they learned over 3 days. He brought to you in just 60 minutes. But first, I want to acknowledge our chapter president, Chuck Roxon. Thank you, Chuck, for being here. Any words from the chairman?
Just to welcome everybody. It's a great turnout, and I'm looking forward to a very useful discussion today. Thank you.
Outstanding. And I also want to acknowledge our special guest, Margie, who is here. She is our ConsultCon organizer, Margie Hansen, intimately involved at the national level for IMC. And I have every confidence she's got her notepad handy, ready to jot down thoughts or suggestions. And sure enough, she's waving them. And Margie, you should know, in one of the rooms that I was in, we came up with a short list of things we'd like for 2023 and 24. So we'll share those later. So we've got a lineup of, I believe it's going to be 4 speakers. And John Anderson will be our first. The second, Bill Hershey, literally couldn't attend. He had this conflict. And so we've speculatively we're taking a risk here by we had him pre-record some remarks. I'm going to play them on video to you. It might work. Who knows? I mean, it's just us consultants here. We can try experimental things amongst ourselves. And I know his message is solid. We'll see how well it comes across in the format. So John first, then Bill, and then we'll go over to Kelli O'Brien, who is joined by Logan. It's Heagerty, and the third member of their trio couldn't make it, but they're going to cover his material when the two of them speak. So that's our lineup. We'll have Q&A at the end, and then at the top of the hour we'll stop recording and go into a more extended breakout conversation. All righty, John Anderson, sir, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Thomas. This was the first ConsultCon that I had attended in person in a couple of years, just like everyone else. And it was miraculous in many ways. You'd meet people who you've been talking with extensively, but all via Zoom. And now you are standing face to face with your old friend who is taller, shorter, you know, this or that. And it's just an astounding experience. The hotel was fabulous. The food, the bar in particular was very good. I can attest I have a new appreciation for bourbon. And it was a wonderful gathering, and it's so much more powerful in many ways. But many people just couldn't. It was out of the question for them to fly to Louisville. So we were able to have the hybrid, and now we're getting together to reflect upon what we've learned, the relationships that we've gained, and how can we implement on a deeper level and reflect upon and share and support each other with the learnings that we've obtained. So let's move forward. I'm excited to hear from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And John, you have actually a couple of points from your attendance. I remember you had. Were you prepared to speak to those now?
Well, only in a very broad way.
Okay.
Everyone was impressed with Mark LeBlanc's keynote talk.
Right.
And the tone and the temper. This was an event of some recovery. We're all in some recovery. And I think we had a very balanced message, a lot of content, but a lot of listening and a lot of compassion for the struggles that everyone has been going through. The
Yeah.
breakouts were wonderful. I ran my little iPhone recorder here and there and have some notes, but the quality was, abysmal. But it's something rather than nothing.
Right.
And overall, it's drinking water from a fire hose, and you do your best to capture, and then it's up to follow up, and then deepening the relationships and applying what we've learned and practicing. So that's my notes at this point. Thank you.
Got it. Love it. Thank you very much. So now we're going to cross our fingers and try this screen sharing approach that I mentioned. We'll optimize for video. I'll share the sound. And if it's not working for you, please type something into chat because I won't be able to hear you. But here we go with Bill Hershey.
As a business coach, I actually fall somewhere in the middle of the spectrum between coach and consultant. The reason why I chose to venture into the consulting side of this spectrum is because folks in my industry tend to need outside help and answers for the business problems they face. In general, they're clinicians at heart, and business is not necessarily their strong suit, nor is it what they were trained to do. As a coach, I help them develop their business instincts, and as a consultant, I provide them with strategic support. I was both delighted and honored to have won a scholarship to attend ConsultCon in November 2022, which I was able to join remotely. For me, this was an opportunity to cultivate knowledge and skills as a business coach, a coach who also happens to do a fair amount of consulting. Since I'm still in the early stages of my career, I find myself eager to glean wisdom from seasoned professionals to accelerate my career path. Because if I can climb on the shoulders of great consultants who've come before me to better serve my clients, I most certainly will, with permission, of course, and I actively seek opportunities to do so. Some of you might actually catch me in the act of doing just that, which, of course, is why I became an IMC member. The presentations that stood out to me most were the keynotes by Manisha Dewan and Mark LeBlanc. The common theme that I found running through both of their presentations was that success as a consultant is largely about human development. They talked about determination, about humility, about treating life as an experiment, and living in a world where there can be more than one right answer. They both displayed a courageous vulnerability in sharing some of their struggles and moments of crisis in their careers and in their lives. They were most certainly talking about business. They were most certainly talking about success. But what I heard underneath that was a message about the human spirit. Now, because our time is limited, I'm going to focus on what I took from Mark's presentation, but I wanted to name that common thread that I saw running so beautifully through both of their talks. By the way, whoever curated those speakers did a really good job. Whoever you are out there in the IMC world, I want to show my appreciation for your efforts. Mark LeBlanc's talk brought up a few deceptively simple, powerful questions that had me deeply contemplating my business and my life for a few weeks, literally. So what were these questions? The first most difficult question that he posed was, what are you willing to do to get what you want? The second most difficult question then comes out of that first question, which is, what do you want? And he didn't leave this one out. And this one is a doozy. I think you'll see why. What do you do? See how that's a doozy? I know, I just couldn't resist the opportunity for that pun. But I'd like to share with you a bit of entrepreneurial vulnerability here and give you a glimpse into my recent struggles in the early stages of my business. This question of what do you do was something I'd been struggling with throughout 2022. In fact, I was struggling to answer all of these questions with clarity and confidence. If I can be a bit dramatic with you, it was like an entrepreneurial existential crisis. Now, perhaps a large part of my problem was that I'd been struggling with that second question that is even more foundational than what do you do? The primary question is, what do I want? What do I want specifically in my business and in my life? I found it refreshing to hear from such an accomplished consultant that these are indeed very difficult questions. I felt validated. Mark asked us if we had ever written down in clear language the answer to what do you want? And I took that as a call to action. Being that ConsultCon fell in the latter half of November, this beautifully complemented my year-end planning, strategy, and visioning activities for my business. This put me into a process of ruthlessly questioning. Whoops.
Whoops.
Within my business strategy. He shared the compelling story of his first being through many moments of wanting to give up. I find this to be a beautiful metaphor for the determination needed in business and in life to achieve something truly great. And I hope for myself that I can conjure this image and these words in moments when I'm challenged beyond what I feel to be my capacity. And I think I know enough about business and about life to know that I'll be facing moments like these as an entrepreneur in the course of my career and in the pursuit of offering my best to the world. Again, no matter how badly your feet are bruised and bleeding, you can always take one more step. I found it elegant how he coupled this image and metaphor with yet another gem. He began his talk with these simple yet powerful words: never underestimate a simple step repeated. Again, never underestimate a simple step repeated. At the end of his talk, Mark circled back around to another question which tied it all together. What is the one service that you would most like to sell? He made the point that the more focused you are, the easier everything becomes. When I was listening to Mark on that November day, my business felt a bit diffuse amongst a diverse spread of service offerings that formed my business model. And to add to that diffusion and confusion, it seemed even more scattered when considering the multiple ambitions and the ideas of what I wanted to add to my service offerings in the coming years. So what can I say? I'm one of these multi-passionate entrepreneurs with a lot of ideas and a lot of creative drive. Mark challenged us to consider, what if you put 80% of your marketing might toward your signature offer? Now, to establish some context for what this meant for me, I offer three main services: a business coaching program, bookkeeping services, and financial forecasting services. Mark's question planted the seed in me and ended up helping me redefine my business model as I coupled these key takeaways from Jim Collins's flywheel framework. And as my flywheel began to take shape, my bookkeeping services and financial forecasting work now serve as complementary forces to build and continue the momentum generated by my coaching program, which is my signature offer. For my benefit, this positioning will increase the lifetime value of my clients through recurring revenue. My clients will benefit through vitally needed financial guidance to help them continue building on the momentum they've gained through completing their coaching program with me. After conceiving the basic layout of this flywheel for my business, I then realized that there was one key gap that I needed to address in my flywheel, which I'm now actively working upon. So that's how I'm taking action with this information. 2023 now becomes a game of continuing to build and refine this flywheel within my business, which was greatly inspired by the clarity I gained from Mark's talk. Now, as you step into the new year, I invite you to consider the powerful, simple questions that Mark brought to the table. What is it that you really want? The challenge that Mark offers here, and the challenge that I'll reiterate to you here today, is write down in clear language your answer to that question. And while you're at it, write down your answer to these other core questions for your business going into 2023. What are you willing to do to get what you want? What is one service that you would most like to sell? And what if you put 80% of your marketing might toward that offer? And I'll end with this, with the same words that Mark used to end his talk. Remember, never underestimate a simple step repeated. And no matter how badly your feet are bruised and bleeding, you can always take one more step.
All righty. Bill's not here for Q&A. However, I would love to spend a few minutes hearing how that landed for you. Maybe you attended ConsultCon and heard the same talk, or maybe you've done something similar already about rethinking your business, or Bill's words resonate for you and you're thinking maybe you should. So I'd like to take a few moments here and contemplate that as a group. I know I felt a little uncomfortable listening to Bill talk about having lots of things going on and being scattered. not me personally, other people near me. Now that's me. And how tempting it is to get scattered and add one more offer, and how that does diffuse our efforts and scatter things. Meant to introduce Bill's segment by mentioning something about Bill. Bill's a cash flow coach, and he helps integrative health and wellness practitioners. That's his focus. It's a very tight focus. I've worked with him as a peer support fellow consultant, one to another. And his niche is great, but he also acknowledged, as you heard, that he's got several offers, and so tightening those up. Let's just say that's the advice I'll be taking away from listening to Bill. I see Sandra nodding. I see Lynn nodding. Kelly's nodding. Yeah. Do I hear a hallelujah or an amen, brother?
I'll give you the amen, brother, from Chicago, if nobody else wants to chime in.
Thank you, Brandon.
I might say that I really appreciated the aspect of, this is going to sound kind of odd, but upselling. So instead of saying, hey, I have all of these things, which one do you want? You really find that pain point, and it's not as overwhelming either. And so you actually get farther with an organization by slowly chipping away at all of the problems they might have than saying, here are all your problems, and I can help you with all of them. And that can be a little overwhelming. So I do appreciate that foot in the door approach.
Nice. Thank you, Ashley. And Sandra, you're speaking, but you're muted.
Okay, so
Yes.
I think that's a very valuable statement about what is one service you would most like to offer instead of being scattered. And for someone as who started out very focused on a very technical field, which is accounting, and then my clients are actually the ones who specialized me, but still I kept thinking, how can I just do like strategic planning, which is what they asked me to do. And I did that and a lot of other things because I kept thinking, what if that doesn't sell, or that doesn't sell, or that I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. And that's a risk, right?
Right.
When you do that. So it goes back to fear, which is what stops all of us.
Oh,
And fear is the biggest force. The counter to that is trust.
right.
Trust in yourself, in your confidence. And that's what I'd like to throw out, because that's what most spoke to me. It's that risk factor, which is tough to get over because of fear. And what if?
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. All right. I feel less alone hearing you say these things. I'm going to actually pivot now over to Kelly, and Noah couldn't make it, but Logan is here, and invite them to speak to their experience. And I'm actually going to introduce them before they speak for once, like I could have and should have done with John and Bill. So Kelly just graduated with her bachelor's in psychology and biochemistry from Willamette University. And when she was an undergrad, she worked for the as a first responder, as well as in some psychology labs. And she's now managing the cross-campus emergency medical group. She also worked as a project manager and consultant in healthcare. Now she's getting her MBA and planning to go into change management in healthcare industry. And Logan is a dual degree student at Willamette University's 3+2 program. He's going to get his bachelor's this year. He'll finish his MBA next year. And his passion is Japanese studies, that's his bachelor's, and the master's is focused on, if I'm not mistaken, the strategy and communications. His long-term goal is to work for a Japanese firm in marketing or consulting. And so, Kelli, if you will lead, I will share the slides you sent to me, and we'd love to hear a little bit of how you got exposed. You didn't travel to Louisville, but your group watched as a group. Tell us how that came to be, and also what you learned.
Yeah, so kind of as an introduction, while Thomas pulls up the slides here. So we got involved with IMC through one of our old professors named Jeff Guilfoy. He taught at Willamette for, God, so many years. We're probably looking at somewhere around like 40 or 50 years. And during the pandemic, he kind of lost contact with our organization. And then he came back and he talked about IMC. And he said, you have to reach out to these people. They're great. And you need to meet them all and pick their brains and get those connections. And so we reached out to John Anderson as our connection to IMC. And then within probably 4 days, we had an invite to ConsultCon to share a Zoom link across all the students that could come. It was smack dab in the center of our Thanksgiving holiday. So it was just me, Logan, and Noah, and we had an amazing time. So I'm really excited to be able
We
to
should
share
add
with
that
y'all.
you got a special dispensation from National to share one membership for 3 people. The benefits of being students.
Yes, so to start off, we'll welcome everyone. We're kind of rounding out the presentation. So some of the things that we talk about, you've heard a little bit of it, but to start off, Logan and I are going to speak towards our experiences and our takeaways from ConsultCon as current MBA students at Willamette University, which is in Salem, Oregon. So let's go to the next slide. So I know we just got an introduction. I'll try to be very brief. As Thomas said, I'm a second-year MBA student. I have a concentration in operations, strategy, and project management. My undergraduate degree is in psychology and biochemistry, and I'm the current president of the Atkinson Consulting Association, which I'll dive into a little more in a second. Our colleague Noah, who is unable to join us this evening, he's also a second-year MBA student with an undergraduate degree in economics and English. He ran our school newspaper for 3 years, I think, at this point. And he specializes in strategy and communications. And then lastly, we have Logan, who you'll meet in just a second. He's representing our first year cohort at Atkinson. So he's a part of our dual degree program. He'll be finishing his bachelor's in May, and then he'll get another graduation ceremony the following May after that for his MBA. So very exciting times all across the board. Next slide. So just briefly, the Atkinson Consulting Association, this is the student group that we're in. It's a group within our MBA program led by students to enhance the knowledge, skills, and network of our student body within the field of consulting. So we have different associations for all different fields of business, and this one specializes for consulting. The organization has taken on a lot of different adaptations over the years, but today it stands as a place for students to learn and explore the consulting industry. So that's kind of how we all got involved with ConsultCon, through this association and our connections through it that led to IMC. So I'm going to pass things off to Logan, who's going to dive into our key takeaways and insights as virtual participants in the next slide. Perfect.
Yeah, thank you. So it's nice to be here with everyone. Thank you for having us. We had the opportunity to join virtually. As students, it is a huge opportunity to be able to attend such an amazing event from such a far away land known as Oregon. And we were just so lucky to be able to have a conference room and, like Thomas said, just share a conference room between the 3 of us. And we were able to network with some of the cameras and things in that room, which was really an awesome opportunity. So the information we gained from the conference was really valuable. We had different times that we could go to different things as attending virtually provides. You're able to choose kind of which events you go to, which was really helpful because we were able to kind of debrief during that time as well while the event was ongoing. and kind of pick and choose events that cater to the needs of the students. We would write a report and kind of give it back to them as we saw fit. So we're able to take so much of this valuable information that we don't often have the opportunity to network with and communicate with from this event due to its virtual nature, and bring it back to the students here at Willamette and try and kind of get their feet wet with some of the concepts and ideas of consulting, as well as some of just the industry expertise that so many of you bring. And it was just a really valuable resource to so many of the students here to be able to hear that. So the next slide kind of talks about the networking opportunity. For those of you who are able to go in person, I'm very jealous. That would have been awesome. And Zoom has its own kind of networking niches, which is good. There were breakout rooms, which we thought was helpful. We were able to kind of meet just a lot of people, get a lot of names down, and make a lot of connections, as I think a lot of other people in different consulting industries were kind of able to come together and do that. But a lot of the really good conversations came to the breakout rooms individually. So one-on-one, we were able to talk with Bill Hershey, who just spoke. And he was able to give us so many different resources that I had never heard of for kind of business coaching, such as SBDCs. And he kind of had local ones. He's from Oregon too, so he was able to kind of know the area. And Notion, Google Business, and just so much good advice from Bill Hershey. And we were also able to have a one-on-one conversation with someone who I'm sure a lot of you guys know, Norman Eckstein. And he just kind of talked to us so much about reasoning and being thorough, kind of like the 5 whys method, and just really kind of digging into what it means to be a consultant. So we're really fortunate to be able to have the opportunity. And I'll pass it back to Kelly.
So then for our final takeaway, we took a vote on all the keynote speakers on which one we thought was the best, and I got outvoted, but we're going to talk a little bit more about Mark because his mindset of success conversation was incredible for young professionals. And so we really distilled the conversation down to 3 main points. The first being that you need to stay focused and you need to define what is the most important thing that you provide to your customers. And if you're juggling more than 3 things at a time, you're not devoting enough energy to that most important thing. So you need to choose your value and carve out your niche. And then the second point that we really highlighted was that you need to be proactive. You should be making new connections every day, whether it's a phone call or an email or just shaking someone's hand. You have to follow up on those connections, even if it's months later, show that you remember and care. And then you never know, those people that you connect with, they could be your next customer, employer, business partner. And it's important to be thinking about those people as you go through your career. And the last one that we took away from this talk is that it's important to take time to reflect. In order to bring the focus and energy needed to succeed in the business world, you have to understand your values and goals. And Mark took this story that we found really valuable in this was that Mark took an entire month in 2009 to walk a pilgrimage between France and Spain, despite there never being like a good time to take off and do this. And as young professionals, I think all of us want to travel, all of us dream of doing things like this. And so it was important for all of us to hear, like, you need to make the time to do those things and take the time to think about what's important for you right now and what will make you a better person going into the future. So overall, we found Mark to be an incredibly effective speaker because of the way that he utilized some of his personal stories and his humor. It never once felt like a lecture, which is really wonderful. Being students, we get lectured all the time. So it was fun to hear someone sharing their own stories and their personal growth and setting the tone for the entire conference, because as Bill mentioned, a lot of the themes that were set here were woven through the entire thing. So it was an honor to be at ConsultCon, and we really appreciate all of y'all for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly and Logan. If folks have questions for Kelly and Logan, I've got you 2 spotlighted, so you're sort of center screen for everyone. Questions or comments from the rest of us, perhaps slightly more experienced folks, on what I heard, by the way, during our warm-up time, that your group, Kelly, managed to get some networking in while other remote participants were off, I guess, playing with their cats or something. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, really early on, we all decided that whenever we saw people, and especially in those first kind of virtual breakout sessions, if we talked to somebody, even just for 5 seconds that we thought had something that they might want to share with us long-term, we pulled the student card. I mean, as students, you get really good at just saying, hi, I'm an MBA student. Do you want to come talk to me about your career, your life, what makes you successful, the things that you did that you wish you never did? And so we did a lot of that and setting up kind of side Zoom meetings between events to just have little coffee hours with everyone.
And how many of those did you pull off?
Probably 3 or 4. What do you think, Logan? Yeah.
Probably 4, maybe 5. It seemed like we
Yeah.
got a lot of really good insight for lots of good conversations. We
Outstanding.
had multiple people in some of those breakout rooms. So
As a fellow consultant, we say, nice hustle. Nice,
Uh-huh.
nice seizing the opportunity.
Uh-huh.
It was hard that early in the morning, so I appreciate that.
Other thoughts and comments from the group?
I'm curious, hi, this is Ron Person. I'm curious, I did a search about a year ago on how many universities have consulting clubs, and there's quite a few. And I'm curious, are most MBA students, do you think, wanting to go into one of the big consulting firms, or go independent, or go boutique?
I think it depends on the students and the university would be my guess. So being that Willamette is a pretty small university in itself, I think a lot of us are looking more towards boutique firms, but I think it depends on the person. I have a lot of friends who are only looking big Fortune 5 companies. That's all they want. And so if they're going to go the consulting route, they would be choosing the larger firms. I don't know, Logan, what do you want in your life?
I would like to do anything. I'm open to all of it, but I think Willamette University is really, and especially the Atkinson Graduates Program, is really specific in the sense that they kind of see the need for consulting more and more as a growing industry and something that's just really relevant and topical. And so something they've introduced to our curriculum recently for MBA students, it's called PACE, which is Practical Application to Careers and Enterprises. And we're working as student groups with managers, project managers who are kind of senior students working directly with local businesses to give them proposals in kind of a small controlled way. So this university, I think, is kind of putting the way forward for that and developing young professionals to be consultants, and the fact that we're kind of working with local industries already this year as part of the curriculum. So I think, yeah, it's a growing thing for sure.
I also have a question for the two of you. You bring a younger generation to the consulting industry, and your new perspective to me is very interesting as you not only listen to the conference, but also your own studies and your own perspectives and to the future or your future. What do you think, each one of you, what are the main problems you would like to solve, or you think it needs to be solved by you?
Logan, should I go first? I can go first, so you can if you want.
Go ahead.
So my focus and my passion and love in this world is healthcare. My parents joke all the time, and I just heard it every day over the holiday break, that I was supposed to be a doctor. That was always the goal, and somehow business pulled me in and swept me off course. But as a prospective healthcare consultant, the thing that I find myself most drawn towards fixing is kind of two things, but they're related. The first side is kind of the electronic medical records that were implemented because of the capitalism nature of the world. There's so many different health electronic record systems that you can use, and they don't integrate with each other. And so there's not the opportunity to like scrap the whole thing and just make one across all hospitals, but there needs to be some sort of incentive that's put in place to make them communicate with each other and have it be a little bit easier for patients to access their own health medical records, and for doctors to be able to easily refer to them from different hospitals as people become a lot more mobile. So that's one side of the issue that I see. And the other side is the fact that And we talk about burnout all the time in the healthcare realm, but there's a real lack of qualified physicians and health professionals. And my fear for the world, especially post-pandemic, is that we've not only burned out the workforce that we have, but we're kind of showing prospective people that this is an industry that is not going to treat you very well. This is an industry that is going to work you until you can't stand. And I think that's going to dissuade some people from their interest and passion in being a provider. So I worry a little bit about that and the access to healthcare and the quality of the healthcare that people will be receiving down the future. So those, if I could like wave a magic wand and fix things, I'd find a way to say that concisely and fix those tomorrow.
And for myself, I think consulting is really just a means of communication. And I love the communication that's present in consulting. It's basically taking information in some tangible or non-tangible form and giving it to a client or person that you're with, whatever it may be, so that they can make better decisions and implement those. And that's kind of what drives me to love Japanese so much too. I really am passionate about, there's just so many barriers between global communication, and Japan is pretty nationalistic and the United States can be nationalistic as well. And so I'm really just passionate about the globalization of the communication between those two nations. There's a lot of disconnects, and consulting is just such a beautiful way to do that. It's just giving people access to that information where there is a former gap. And I saw Robert Snyder's question as well about just kind of what's the advice for having multiple generations in the workplace. And I think it's the same thing. I think everyone in this call is, if you're consulting, you're a communicator. And I think just staying on top of that communication is just so key, whatever form you do that in. So that's why I'm passionate about it. And it's awesome to see you guys are as well.
Thank you.
And inspired for sure.
Other thoughts and questions? Or I'm sorry, Margie, you got your hand up.
Yeah, Kelly, hi. Nice to see you again. And as wonderful as Mark LeBlanc is, we all recognize that. You mentioned you got outvoted, and I'm curious as to which keynote speaker came in as beneficial to you after Mark or before Mark.
Well, I think he's here today, so we might be able to get David Norman to come and just rehash his lecture, but he did a really engaging talk about kind of I'm not going to remember the exact words, but sort of like the pitfalls of consulting that people can fall into and then how to do it better. And I loved that because as Logan mentioned, we have some consulting experiences woven into our MBA program. And then I did all of my internships at different consulting firms. And so I felt really confident, like, yeah, I'm getting this under my belt. And then I heard David's talk and I was like, okay, so some of these things aren't perfect. And there was also things that I never really thought about doing that I was like, great, I'm not going to do those now. So I liked that one the best, but that's okay. It's fine that other people liked other ones. You know, we're all different.
All good. All good. Thank you.
And David, I pulled you on the spotlight. You, Margie, Kelly, and Logan are all now four on stage, if you will. David, can you recap for those of us who weren't so fortunate as to hear you speak live, what you consider to be your key takeaways?
Interesting question, Tom. Thank you. First of all, Kelly, the check's in the mail. Thank you. With that said, and I shared in the breakout group, the only shortfall I found in ConsultCon was there were not enough people there. Now we know pandemic, we know all that, but there were just gobs, technically described, gobs of information that was floating around that would help any and everybody, not only on this call, but elsewhere in the consulting profession, that to just ramp up your game, whether it was Mark LeBlanc or David Norman. It's okay. My takeaways were, if I look towards next year as just an example, let's make it face-to-face. You know, here we are, I'm talking on the West Coast. And I appreciate the opportunity that Zoom gives us, but the benefits of being face-to-face, up close and personal, the networking that takes place, you can't substitute a two-dimensional video for that. And I'm not saying anything nobody doesn't already know. Consulting is a great career. I had shared with the breakout group that I'm coming up on my 50th anniversary of it right now. I think I may have more years than maybe Chuck, but that's about it on this call. And it's easy to mess it up. It's easy to do it right. And if in our quest of IMC, if we can help everybody be better consultants by, here I go, I'll go into my sales pitch, adhering to a code of ethics and the core competencies that IMCI have, then we're going to be better. And that's the way we differentiate ourselves from the mass of humanity. I shared there in Louisville, estimated 1.1 million people in consulting in the US today. That's a lot of competition. But you being a member of IMC makes you different. Okay, that's the networking, whether it's this call or ConsultCon, is what's the important part, Thomas. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but I threw enough words at it that some of them are going to stick.
Thank you. And I know Francisco's got his hand up. I'll get to Francisco in just a second. Kelly, Logan, anything to either add on to what David said or respond? Otherwise, your time with us on stage has come to a close. And thank you, Kelly and Logan. We'll talk to you more during Q&A.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Actually, I didn't want to let him off the hook that easy.
Oh, I'll pull him back. I got the power.
Yeah, don't let him, don't.
All right. They're back.
So, first of all, what David said, I think is, I don't know, he didn't say exactly what I'm going to say, which is, if you want to make, and I didn't go, I've never gone, but I've talked to other service providers that have gotten back in the event game, and they have chosen not to have a virtual component because they wanted the exclusivity of the event and the people that were there. And also, if you have important executives, of course, we're all consultants, but if you have important people in the room, sometimes they don't want their thoughts to be shared, and you want to get some of this, very spontaneous stuff that you get live. You don't want people to, feel like they're being recorded and it's going to be played back 100 times. But here's my comment to Kelly and to Logan. Part of being a consultant, in my view, is being the one who says the things that don't want to be heard. So saying bullshit when it's bullshit. Okay. So you all are incredibly articulate. I'm very impressed. We need more people like you in our ranks. So tell us what didn't smell good. Tell us what you didn't like. Tell us what you would improve upon. That's what really helps.
You're on the spot. I'm not saving you, by the way. You're on your own for this one.
I could say something, I guess. Like I said, I really loved being online for some aspects. There was really good opportunities to just break out into different rooms with different people who were also attending virtually. It seemed kind of like a bird's eye view of the event. But we did definitely miss out on some of that key networking, shaking hands, giving cards, things like that. So that is definitely a valuable aspect that I think if you can attend in person would be ideal. And then just, some of the breakout rooms in the large scale were almost too large to have everyone be heard and have enough time for it. So I think smaller scale breakout rooms would have been most helpful for sure, because that's where we got a lot of our great information.
Thank you, Logan. Kelly.
Gosh, you just highlighted why people don't want to share bad things while they're being recorded, because it's going to get played back eternally. I think for me, one of the harder things about this conference, being the coordinator of the students trying to get together, is that it was very last minute for us. And I think navigating the schedule for it seemed to be a challenge for a lot of the people that were virtual, and figuring out kind of what was being offered to the virtual participants and what wasn't. So So if I had to change anything about ConsultCon, I would have gotten rid of the hybrid part. You either are in person or you are virtual, because when you put people in this limbo state, they kind of become like an afterthought, like, oh yeah. And then the Zoom people will go off into their Zoom breakout room and they'll talk. And I think that makes it difficult because, as Logan mentioned, if you put 30 or 40 people in a Zoom breakout room with no real direction on what to say, everyone just kind of sits there staring at each other. So I think there needed to be a little bit more direction in that sense about like what the goals were of those breakout rooms. And we got it. At some point, it started to click a little bit for everyone. But I think it was the keynote speakers and everything ended up being very, very good. And also like it was easy to understand and hear and be a part of as a virtual participant. So I think
I want to acknowledge Francisco for doing an excellent job of stirring the pot. And David, Norman, as a presenter, I'll amplify Francisco's question. As a presenter, keynote speaker, what's something that you'd like to see a future ConsultCon do differently and better based on your experiences of this last one?
The first answer is really easy. More people.
There you go.
Just more people. The energy in the room was good. When you're on the platform, you tend not, you read the room, no question, but your energy comes from the room. And the fewer people, obviously, the less energy there is. That's not a criticism of who's around the table, but it's just a matter of fact. I don't have anything but positive vibes. Margin may have shared, I was a latecomer to the platform in the sense that the only reason I was up there, somebody else failed out. You sort of reluctantly say, okay, I can do this. But I think that in living on what I did, Thomas, I guess I'd probably say some more programs about how to be a successful consultant would also help.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mine was tips and traps, but there are other variations on a theme. Those who have gone through several iterations have something to share and maybe can help some other folks as they go into their first or second iteration of consulting. So that's consultant to consultant, probably, Thomas, would be the best way to put it.
Outstanding. Thank you for that. Norman, you are excused, David Norman, from being on stage. I have unspotlighted you. And thank you both for being a speaker and also for showing up today and contributing. So in our remaining roughly 10 minutes of our sort of on stage being recorded, before we turn off the recording and get even more real with each other, I'm curious, what would be something, it doesn't matter if it's realistic. I don't care if it's realistic. I want to know either an activity you'd like to see at a future ConsultCon or an outcome, even if you have no idea how it's brought about, that you would like from a future ConsultCon. And we've heard some things, we can repeat them. There's no penalty for repetition. If you're the kind of person who prefers to write things, put it in chat. I'll read it out loud. If you'd rather just blurt it out, please do. And I will initiate by sharing the list that came up in the pre-event networking. If there's some way to make all the breakouts accessible, even if you got 5 tracks, I got to pick one track. There's 4 I'm not going to see. Give me some way to get like the cliff notes or the slides or like a boiled down summary or something from those other 4. Don't leave me in ignorance and don't tell me, well, you can walk into the other ones. I promise you, I'm not going to flip channels and get any value. It's just not going to happen. And if I'm paying for the event, I want all the breakouts, at least in abbreviated form. And I agree with that point. It wasn't my original point, but I'm going to jump on it with both feet. Another thought that was brought up again in the pre-work was tracks by industry and or methodology. So if there's like an oil and gas track, there's enough people to justify that, or something on interviewing techniques, which would be a technique. Change management has got to be a classic. And I'll offer my own 2 cents. I would devote a day to an unconference format and allow those who are present to create the agenda and create the content for each other. I've been to enough unconferences to know that that's a very fertile way of creating a very powerful experience for attendees. I've never had one disappoint. It would be a little unusual maybe for ConsultCon, but an unconference approach as the first of 3 days or last of 3 days, or as a some way to work that in without obstructing the more structured normal way of being could work. David and Jen both have their hands up. The last point was more interactivity and better online tools. David's in line first. David Norman, go.
Yeah, I can be really brief. Thank you. So that surprises most of you. More on the consulting competencies. It is that those competencies that separate us from everybody else who out there playing at consulting. Workshops on what do those competencies mean? How do I better use them? How do I put them into my practice? Again, my contention is I don't care what you consult in. I want to know how you consult. So, Thomas, consulting competencies. And I'll yield the floor to the chairwoman on the West Coast, Jennifer Beaver.
Thanks. When you mentioned the unconference, I just think that's so exciting because many, many years ago at an IMC conference, a gentleman named Mike Shays, I believe. Yes, I see some heads nodding. He led a session called Open Space Technology, and it is designed to do exactly that.
Yes.
You kind of put your topics up on a little board and notes, and then you shuffle them around and prioritize, and areas are created where those discussions will take place, and you just walk over to the one you want to go to and talk, listen. Maybe you get up and go to the next one, you're second on your list. I was so enamored with that. I brought it back to the SoCal chapter and did it also at the Association for Strategic Planning. And then in 2019, which is the last IMC conference before COVID, it happened in Dallas. I led an open space technology there, and it was very dynamic. There were 6 tables that got created. People were buzzing and moving around and talking to each other. So not an entire day or conference, but a session. And look that up, open space technology. It's a wonderful free form program that lets you bring whatever you want to learn to the table and learn from other people who talk about it also.
I will jump on Jen's bandwagon by sharing some photos from the unconference I led in Seoul, South Korea a couple of years ago. That's me in the upper right, a few pounds lighter. And this is a portion of the group. This is the big group meeting. There's a lot of small breakout rooms. There's subgroups that gather to talk about something. At the end of it, out of the small groups, you end up with a report out at the end where people who do the breakouts come back to the main group and say, okay, we went away for half an hour and talked about a thing. Here's what we came up with as next steps or confusion or whatever it is. It's a very, very fun and interesting approach to.
And it goes back to what Kelli talked about. Kelli mentioned, we're student. I got my MBA at night school. I worked all day and then went and listened to the talking head all night. So I totally get it. We don't want talking heads. Well, students don't want them. Well, a lot of us consultants don't want them either. So how do we get to participate and talk to each other as opposed to sit in the audience and try to stay awake? And anyway, I'll stop there.
Thank you for that. Final 5 minutes. Any closing thoughts from folks? Well, I would ask you this. We have some comments in the chat. I'll read them out loud as I promised I would. Kelli mentioned it could be fun to do interest and networking groups, like breakout rooms for specific types and topics, so individuals can connect, speak with people in their field. She was thinking it'd be incredibly fun for her to meet in a breakout room of a group of consultants in healthcare. That would certainly appeal to her. And Jorge says smaller breakout rooms with a possible project or a document to complete at the end. I like that thought. And yeah, the technique that I used in South Korea was the open space technology approach. If you do there's a Wikipedia page on it and various approaches. I would add one other thing from my own sort of bag of tricks. If you're going to do group stuff, and maybe I should take my own advice and start doing that here with us, there is a lovely website. You may have heard us mention it in a prior one of our Pacific Northwest Oregon and Washington events, Liberating Structures, which is a set of repeatable, reliable processes for involving large numbers of people, typically, but not exclusively, in small groups that break out and then reconvene to work together and create value or create consensus or generate ideas. And you'll see that there's a list of currently 33 specific approaches in the Liberating Structures menu. And what they all have in common is it's sort of everyone's invited. There's clear rules of more or less how to do things, but what actually happens is very much under the control of the participants, both the topic and some of the styling. And so there's enough structure to really know kind of like what you're supposed to try to do, but then you get to bring your own individuality to it. So I find that Liberating Structures and an open space technology on conferences have a lot of positive synergy with each other. And we're going down a bit of a rat hole here because I'm interested in it, and I apologize for hijacking the topic. Other thoughts and comments?
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, Maurice.
I just wanted, thanks for sharing the unconference idea. I think it's brilliant.
Thank you. Other things that folks would like to throw out for Margie and whoever else would like to watch the recording when we're done, of what you'd love to see. Either you loved it in a prior conference, you'd like to see it again, whether it was an unconference, whether it was ConsultCon or some other event, or if you've never seen it, but you'd love to see it. Let's just toss some ideas out.
Just one quick comment. I'm also that IMC USA has a foundation, and we tend to do several scholarships a year for students who want to come to ConsultCon. So keep that, all of you guys, keep that in mind. Okay.
We'll make sure not know that next time we come around next time that song comes around on the guitar.
Everybody loves the word scholarship.
I love it. Chuck will be second. Jen is first, and then we'll wrap up.
Someone may have mentioned this, workshops before and after the conference. One thing that I find increasingly difficult to keep up with is technology. What's your technology stack? What's the latest? IMC conference is where I learned about LinkedIn in 2004. So, that was so early, and it wasn't such an eye-opener. I think things like that where we can get a deep dive and really walk away with an action list on a certain technology or topic. I'd love to see more of that. And even if it's maybe some kind of a fee to add it on to your conference experience, I'd love to see that.
Outstanding. Thank you, Jen, for that. Chuck, you are our last speaker. Wrap us up, please.
Yes, it's 4:59, and I wanted to be the last speaker just to once again thank everybody for attending today. This has been a very interesting, useful, and stimulating opportunity to listen to what you've said. I have pages of notes, and I'm going to follow up on this material. The students, thank you so much.
Yes.
It was really fabulous to go back in time myself listening to you. It was fun. And I'm sure that what you plan to do will be really interesting. So thank you everybody for joining, and you folks, you students, we expect to see more of you the rest of this year. So don't disappear on us. It's part of our strategic plan last June that we put together, was to start getting younger people involved, so we have people to pass the torch to. You know, it's no good when you're 76 passing the torch to a 70-year-old.
Not that we're ageist or anything.
No,
And
no,
on
that's
that
not
questionable ethical note, I'm going to
But
wrap us up and say,
you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Anyway, so
do.
thank you all for joining us, and I'll turn it back over to Tom to kick off the unrecorded, spontaneous portion of our program.
Indeed. Thank you, Chuck, for being our chapter president. Thank you, John Anderson, for attending, for reporting, and for being the long-serving former chapter president for IMCnow. And thank you all for attending. I'm Thomas Cox. We'll see you back here in February, where we'll be having yet another awesome program. Take care. Goodbye.